Good evening. Welcome to COVIDcast number 25. I am Henry Hushke coming to you from Traverse City, Michigan. It is Tuesday, April 7th, 2020. Okay, so it's going to be another quick cast here tonight. I'm going to go over kind of the virus and the general outlook right now. So, yesterday, or kind of today, I published it today, we talked about Italy in those numbers, and we see some continued trends with Italy, which are positive, which I'll touch on here. First, I'll go to the Johns Hopkins site. At this hour, on their site, they're reporting 1,414,738 cases globally. This represents about 100,000 new cases today, which is it's okay. I think it represents a few things. Although the count isn't really very accurate. Realistically, probably about 10 million is the real number of cases around the world right now. From people that just have it and haven't started showing symptoms yet, and anyone else. But it does give us a good idea in countries where testing has been super prevalent. So we are seeing a logarithmic curve kind of start to bend. So that's good. But like I said, I think it just depends on where you're at, what's happening. So a few points. If we go over to the Italian site, very promising today. Today represented a very nice continuation of the trend we talked about yesterday in the charts. Basically, today we saw 3,039 new cases, so lower than yesterday. Now a 1, 2, 3 day stretch of lower case numbers consecutively. And we saw the lowest new total, or the total active cases, the lowest new total active case number that we've seen since March 10th. So very promising. Only 880 new total active cases today. Deaths still remained above 600 today, 604. So fairly negative. But again, this deaths should be the last number to kind of take a significant declines. So we did see that, but we saw a large increase in the number of recovered today. Over 1,500 were released today, so that's nice to see. We are seeing these new positives and these recovered. They're getting closer. They're going to cross. They're going to cross. So good news out of Italy today. Hopefully we see this trend continue. If we head over to the Worldometer site, we got quite a few things here to look at. Right now, as of recording, some interesting trends. We got the U.S. right now with 27,500 new cases. So not its all-time highs in the U.S. Of course, a lot of that growth, that initial growth came from New York. And now New York's curve has started to flatten, but in other places we're still seeing growth, and that's kind of starting to replace that growth from New York. So that's like kind of canceling out almost the fewer new cases in New York with the more new cases in other places. But today in the U.S. we saw really, really ridiculous new death number at 1,877. So that's the highest number I believe we've seen from any country. So really bad, and is likely to continue for at least another 2 weeks probably. So death tolls are going to be catastrophic, to say the least, in the U.S. at this point. And I think we're just going to see kind of where the outbreak is shift. New York was the focus. I think we're going to see a shift now. So we'll see how that goes. And obviously, like we've talked about here, there's, this is really the first wave of this. There's a lot of future pitfalls. This is a very long-term thing until the vaccine is out. And even then, it will be about distribution of the vaccine, and that will take some time, and there'll be risks with that. So this really is a long-term issue. Some developments. Boris Johnson is in the ICU, the Prime Minister in the UK. So there's a pretty negative development there. Um, yeah, hopefully he's doing okay. Um, yeah, probably the most worrying data point, I guess, well, before I get to that, Spain showing fewer new cases today, still over 700 deaths today, but Spain seems to be where Italy was about a week ago, like we've talked about during this whole thing. So hopefully, we'll see Spain getting down to getting down in their total new case numbers soon. Although Spain continues, still lags behind Italy. It's done 400,000 fewer tests, so likely quite a few more positives than Italy still. So that's not very good. The nation that is really worrying to me, though, right now is France. France has some pretty whack stuff going on right now, to say the least. They basically figured out that a bunch of people at certain nursing homes were dying in France. And today, and I think it's because they expanded their testing so much, or they're starting to expand their testing. But today, France just clocked in this absolutely ridiculous 11,000 new case number, and 1,417 new deaths. So I don't know. I mean, that is a seriously high number coming out of France. And when I look at this, they've done 224,000 tests, but they have 109,000 cases. So almost half of their tests are coming back positive in France, and they've still done half. They've still done almost half the cases per capita that even the U.S., who's done such a poor job, uh, has done. So I mean, France. Je suis un peu inquiet pour le français maintenant. Uh, pour la France, désolé. Yeah, it's just it's not a good trend out of France. Germany, we continue to see Germany keep up with things. It doesn't seem like they did a whole lot of tests though since 2 days ago though, so I'm not sure if that column just hasn't been updated, but that's something to watch out for. Um, but yeah, still pretty terrible numbers. China has not reported as the time of recording. Today they lifted the lockdown on Wuhan, so it's a very interesting development. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Now, obviously, they've been under lockdown for over 2 months now, 2.5 months, I guess, 6 weeks. So they're finally allowing travel out of the city. So, and apparently that was crowded, packed, people leaving. So hopefully, and they've been under lockdown for a very long time. So you'd think they've been pretty careful to make sure they have it under control, but hopefully they do, because if they don't, we could see China reaccelerate pretty quickly. But that happened today, so some positive news, I suppose. A country that has suppose it seems like has finished its curve, although China is definitely going to be susceptible to getting spread again from the rest of the world, and that could become a big issue again. So we'll see. We'll obviously keep monitoring that. But for the time being, it seems like China is definitely at least furthest along in their outbreak compared to anyone else, and should kind of be the goal for everyone. Iran, it's kind of hard to tell what is happening with Iran. I'm not quite sure how much testing they're doing. They keep reporting lots of new cases. I don't know. It seems like a very bad situation. But the type of growth seen is strange. It's odd, to say the least. Basically, just seems like they report the same number every day. So, I'm not quite sure what's happening in Iran. UK, we mentioned lower new cases today. Very high death toll in the UK. Obviously accelerating and will continue to accelerate, I assume. It seems like France, the UK, and the US are probably going to be in four figures for deaths a day for probably a few weeks here. So, very bad news there. Turkey continues to be a worry for me. Lots of new cases, lots of new cases in Turkey, and that is a serious place to watch for social unrest for sure. Yeah, very interesting there. Switzerland, looking a little bit better today, actually. Seems like maybe the Swiss effects, seems like they're starting to see some results for what they've done. Anyways, same with the rest of Europe. It seems like, again, these lockdowns, they really do work. They're not a silver bullet, there's still huge issues. This is the scale of this crisis is unfathomably difficult. I mean, it is really, really insane. But yeah, Brazil. Brazil is worrying to me. Again, just the testing in Brazil, terrible. The only thing Brazil has going for it, I suppose, is unlike France, where half their tests are coming back as positive. Brazil sees a lower proportion of their tests coming back as positive. But I mean, their testing, it sticks out like a sore thumb. Is just yikes, yikes, yikes. They really need to get their act together in Brazil on the testing front, because otherwise they could end up being the worst outbreak in the world, frankly. So Brazil continues to be a worry. We'll see what's happening, and if they're not testing this much, there could be even more deaths occurring, that just aren't even getting attributed to COVID. Who knows? There could have already been many deaths that occurred that people just assume were old age or something of that nature, that were due to COVID. South Korea today, reporting really great numbers. I mean, South Korea, just talk about just a success story, an extreme success story. Only fewer than 50 new cases today. Those are some snaps for South Korea. Good job. Israel seeing pretty low numbers today too. Ton of testing. It's what we want to see. And we see when people test, it turns out the case fatality rate is lower. So Israel seems like some good data, although as we found out, the cases precede the deaths. So we'll still see what happens there. Russia, another worrying one for me. India, another definitely worrying for me. They have scaled up their testing quickly, but we'll see. And I know you can't see these on the screen, so I'm sorry. I'm just scrolling through this whole list. You can check it out too in the link in the description. I do see, just scrolling through here, Colombia looks like a point of concern. Pretty large increase today. Yeah, just going down the list, lots of countries dealing with this, obviously. And we still have a long ways to go, very long ways to go. This will, in the U.S. domestically here, be going on, I believe, some point in May, mid to late May is probably a goal to try to start to reopen things. I think large gatherings are toast until we have a vaccine practically here. I mean, because I just think it'll be, anytime we loosen things up, we're, things could just start all over again, and we could go back into the same routine again, the same thing that we're doing now. So it's super hard. I think certainly travel is going to have to be severely restricted, because it's almost a guarantee that there is going to be a place on the globe where COVID exists, even by the time there's a vaccine. It's just going to keep coming back. At this point, it's just so widespread. And especially even some of the limited evidence we're seeing of it being in animal populations. I don't know if, I'm not quite sure, and it doesn't seem like it spreads incredibly easily, but, we do know that this did come from some sort of animal, whether it's a bat or something else. So we do know it can spread between animals and humans, so if there are lots of animals that carry the virus, who knows? It could just keep popping up. So, as we all know, it's a big issue. Looking at Michigan today, we saw an increase in daily deaths and confirmed cases, and this number is going to do nothing but go up for anyone that lives here. I mean, this number, if I had to guess, there's probably 3 times the current total confirmed cases, 18,970. 50,000, I think, is safe for how many cases there actually are in Michigan, and probably by the time we're done, I would not be surprised to see above 100,000 just in our state. It's really a tragedy. My dad, who picture here, he came back home a few days ago and he's just going back to work. He had spring break off, so he had 7 days off that he had already had before this all started. But now he's back at work. So here's a little picture of him. Anyways, just from his experience, I know that even up here where we're at in a somewhat rural area, he's starting to see plenty of patients in the hospital who are at least suspect. A good, I think at this point it's likely that he's seen over 10 people who have it, at least, and maybe around 20 people in the last few weeks that have seen it. So it is here. It's definitely around. What we're doing is necessary. It's not just something that Detroit's dealing with. It's something that's really everywhere. So that's something to keep in mind. We know that just even in my county here, there's already been 3 deaths. So, if we assume that it has a 2% fatality rate, well, 3 times 50, that would be 150 cases, and right now we have 15 confirmed cases. So, I think that spells it out for you. It's likely there's a lot more cases that we're not catching, and Michigan's testing is still pretty limited. I mean, we're still basically at 15 or like 60,000 tests for the state, so not even a percentage of the state's population. Obviously, it's been very difficult to scale up, but it's just the fact that the tests are not all there. It's not like we're doing widespread screening, so still a huge issue. But what we're doing, I think, is going to prove to be very beneficial. I still think some of these states that are still open might see on a per capita basis just a worse outbreak because of what they're doing. I think it's really important that we took action early. So just know that what we're doing is not in vain. We're saving lives by this, and it's going to be looked back. This is going to be looked back on as something that was worth it, I think. Anyways, I think that's going to do it for me tonight. Although I will give you the question of the day. The question of the day, write it down. Write your answer down in the comment section is, what is your favorite holiday and why? All right, thank you so much for tuning in here to episode 25. Wow, a quarter of the way to 100. Definitely, I would not be surprised if we're here for 100. I don't know. I'll have to plan out something special for maybe 50 here. That one's much more likely to happen. Anyways, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate the continued following, and I hope you have a terrific Tuesday.